Hey everybody, welcome to the Magic Weekly News Update for Monday, February 25th, 2019 on the Leek. I'm John as always, and my plan is destroyed. I specifically brought this back on Monday nights because I said, you know what? Magic news always comes out on Mondays. I was doing them on Sundays. The news was stale. It wasn't fresh anymore. And, of course, news came out on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Saturday and Sunday of last week. So the news is stale once again, but I'm going to keep it here for now. And if they continue to do stuff a lot on the Thursday Magic show that they do, I might move this. We'll see, but for now it's going to stay on Mondays. Anyways, the first bit of news that we had this week is very fluffy stuff over on the blog Atog, which is Mark Rosewater's Tumblr, where he answers questions from fans. And I won't cover a lot of this stuff, but this one was interesting. Somebody asked snow, when or if, which is a common thing over on Rosewater's blog of him simply saying when or if. When meaning it's going to happen, it's just a matter of when. If being it might happen. That's an if it'll happen. But somebody asked about snow mechanics, the snow-covered basic lands and snow mana from Ice Age and Cold Snap, and he replied, supplemental set, when. Standard legal set, if. So, that's a little bit of interesting insight as to where we might be going in supplemental sets. The best theory that I heard was Battle Bond Winter Games. So we have, the winter version of Battle Bond. We had the summer version, and there's snow mana. That'd be kind of cool. Anyways, bit of fluffy news there. Up next, there was an announcement of a couple of products that we knew were coming, but it's good to actually have dates for these. Core Set 2020 is coming out on July 12th of this year, which presumably means the pre-release would be the week before, July 12 minus 7. I'm not going to do math right now. You do it. And we also are getting Commander 2019 coming out on August 23rd, which interestingly is the same weekend as GP Vegas. So I wonder if there's going to be some sort of Commander presence at GP Vegas. That'd be kind of cool. Unfortunately, I'm missing Vegas. I was going to go this year, and then I remembered, oh yeah, I'm getting married the week after, so I might be a little bit busy. So no Vegas for me this year, but hopefully next year. But for those of you going, maybe you'll get a Commander release weekend treat. So check that out. Up next, more little product and fluff news before we get into the big stuff. The Rise of the Gatewatch, a visual history cover was shown, as well as a bit of a description about it. It appears this is an art book, 256 pages, but it is from a different company than the previous art books, which I believe was Viz Media, which are hands down my favorite Magic supplemental product. Those art books are so good. This one's being published by Abrams Comic Arts. I'm not familiar with them or what they do, so I'm not sure if this is going to be the same style or not. But it's a 256-page hardcover book with a packaging, card, and convention-exclusive artwork detailing the history, the rise, and potential fall, who knows, of the Gatewatch and all the characters involved in there. So, cool little product. I'm going to keep my eyes on it. I hope it's as good as the previous art books, because boy, were they ever good. All right. Fluff out of the way, on to the big announcements that came shortly after my last video and made me reconsider whether these should be on Mondays or not. Up first, there's going to be a new mulligan used specifically at Mythic Championship London. I've already seen some confusion here. It's not going to be tested at the Grand Prix at London or the Magic Fest side events. It's just for the 500 or so people qualified for the Mythic Championship, previously known as the Pro Tour, to test out. So, the new mulligan is, you draw 7, you decide whether you keep it or not. If you do, cool, you play Magic. If you don't, you shuffle it back, and then you draw 7. And you do that again, and again, and again, and again, until you decide that you're going to keep. When you decide that you're going to keep, you look at your 7 cards, and you take out X number of cards, where X is the number of mulligans you took. You take those cards of your choice, and put them on the bottom of your library in a random order. So if you mulligan down to 5... you've drawn 7, but you have to take 2 cards of your choice and get rid of them and put them on the bottom of your library. I first heard about this while I was streaming. I didn't actually get to watch the announcement, and my first response was, change, no. And then I thought about it, and I thought, no, this is maybe actually good. I'm not sure, though. I need to see the data on it. Ultimately, I think it's very good for Standard and for Limited. I think it definitely helps make there be less non-games, which is a very good thing, and I don't think it's so horribly overpowered in Standard and Limited, because yes, you could mulligan down to the card that you wanted, but you're still mulliganing. You're still throwing away card advantage, and you don't get the scry anymore either. So you're still throwing away card advantage to try to get consistency. So I still don't think it's the correct move. If I have a bomb in my deck, I'm not going to mull down to 1. How the hell am I going to cast that? So I don't think it's a big deal. I think people who are decrying it as a horrible change are a little bit hyperbolic. for Standard and Limited. Modern is a whole different ball game. There's a lot of combo decks in Modern. And, you know, if I could mull down to 5, but that's going to guarantee me that every time I have Tower, Mine, Power Plant, Karn, that's a possibility. That maybe makes Tron a little bit too more powerful. But the trick is my opponent, who has sided in Stone Rain or some sort of land hate or hand attack, they can also do that. So I really need to see the data before I make a decision as to whether or not I like this for Modern or Legacy or Vintage. And that's why they're testing it at Mythic Championship London. Mythic Championship London is not Standard. It's Modern. You have 500 people, you have 500 of the best players in the world playing this format, and they are heavily incentivized to find out how to break this mulligan. Because if they do, and they win, they get a lot of money. So this is actually the perfect place to test this. If there are problems, they are going to be found out. And if there's not problems, well, then we have a new mulligan. So they're going to see how this works, and if it goes well, it'll probably be implemented. If it doesn't go well, they'll go back to the drawing board. I'm super curious how this is going to work, and so I'm actually, tentatively, no guarantee yet, I'm going to do a Dominaria draft this month on stream, paper draft with the overhead camera, card recognition, all that jazz, and assuming everybody agrees to this, which I'll force them to, we're going to do the London Mulligan. And we're going to get first-hand limited experience and see what it's like. Of course, this will be the night where we all have amazing opening hands and never mull, but that's my plan. So let me know what you think about this mulligan decision. I'm very curious, especially if you have real math behind it rather than feelings, because I'm super curious how it's going to work out. I'm optimistic. I want to see data. Up next, we finally got to hear about how to qualify for a Mythic Championship qualifier. This was an interesting thread that was going through kind of the last several months of people on Twitter and YouTube videos and etc. being very mad at Wizards about not telling us what's going to replace PPTQs, and then how did we ever know how we were going to ever qualify for the Mythic Championship? That was a bit hyperbolic, because we always knew the Pro League was getting in. We always knew that the Magic Online qualifiers were still there. We always knew that if you top 8 at a Grand Prix or got a certain number of points, if it was a big Grand Prix, got there. We knew all the ways of getting to the Pro Tour. We just didn't know the one, which is what was replacing PPTQs. Well, what's replacing PPTQs is WPN Mythic Championship qualifiers, which are just like PTQs of old. If you're new to Magic, if you have played Magic the past 2 or 3 years, you only know PPTQs, preliminary Pro Tour qualifiers, that you win and then get to go to the regional Pro Tour qualifier, where if you, I believe, top 8, you get to go to the Pro Tour. Before that, we had just PTQs, which were large events in between a PPTQ and a PTQ in size, hosted by relatively large stores or tournament organizers, where you would win and get to go to the Pro Tour. We're going back to that, and I actually kind of liked that. I wasn't a big fan of the PPTQs that were being run by random hole-in-the-wall stores. You know, the 5-player, or I guess they had to be 8, the 8-player PPTQ where some random person won and got to go to an RPTQ. I wasn't a fan of that. I like the slightly bigger competitive idea for this. Now, in order to get to one of these events, you do need to have 200 Planeswalker points earned between April 1st and June 30th. I believe the first chunk of these for Barcelona, there is no qualification required, but starting after that, you're going to have 200 Planeswalker points. But they are doubling how many Planeswalker points you get at FNM. If you go to every FNM in that April 1st to June 30th period, and you win twice in each one, you'll have enough Planeswalker points to do this. If you go to a Grand Prix, you can get 200 Planeswalker points in a weekend. It's not too hard, but it's just hard enough. If you really want to get those Planeswalker points, you can. You get Planeswalker points for every event you play. Saturday or Sunday Standard Showdown, whatever day it happens to be on, the random Tuesday Modern event that you're going to, all of these pay out Planeswalker points. So if you need your 200 because you really want to go to one of these, you can get it. It's not that big of a deal. And yeah, as I said, you can still get to the Mythic Championships in all the usual ways that we already knew about. Now, another thing we didn't know about the organized play was we knew that Mythic Championships on Arena were coming, but we knew nothing about them. And now we know stuff about them, and they're interesting. They're very interesting. So first off, they have a prize pool of $750,000, whereas the tabletop ones have prize pools of $500,000. Only 52 people get to play in the arena one, so that's $750,000 for 52 people. The tabletop Mythic Championships, previously the Pro Tours, have up to 500 players splitting $500,000. So these arena championships are very high value. So how do you get to them? Well, 32 people are the Magic Pro League. You're not one of them. You're not getting into that probably ever. But those 32 get to go. Prior performance invites, so people who previously did well, I believe it's the top 4, get to automatically go to the next one as well. Maybe you get there someday. Not this time, though. And then finally, for me and you and everybody else, we have the MTG Arena Mythic Championship Qualifier Weekend. The top 1,000 Mythic ranked challengers in constructed or limited on Magic Arena through the season, which will be, I believe, a 2-month period. I don't see the date exactly, but it should be about a 2-month period, I believe. If you can get to the top 1,000 in Mythic on Arena, in either format, you get a token that allows you to play on Saturday, the Mythic Qualifier Weekend Day 1. On that Saturday, you have to get the maximum number of wins, which they haven't said how much that is yet, before you get the maximum number of losses. So basically, it sounds like you're going to play in a large, long league on Saturday. And if you hit the maximum number of wins before you hit the maximum number of losses, you qualify for Day 2. Day 2 is a Swiss paired tournament. Best of 3. They explicitly said it will not be best of 1, which is very nice. Makes me a little worried about Saturday. You get to play in this tournament, and if you top 16 it, I believe, yes, if you top 16 it, you get to go to the Mythic Championship Arena event, which I assume will not be going. I assume you play it at home. But yeah, very cool. This is what I've been waiting for Arena, is an open way of getting to a tournament that doesn't require grinding out a tiny number of spots. Grinding out to the top 8 is not fun. It is awful for your mental health and your physical health for that matter. But grinding out top 1,000, that's not too hard. And top 1,000 in limited, I might give that a go. Maybe I suddenly start streaming a whole lot more and we try to get there. I may very well try that just to get to that Day 1 and maybe that Day 2 and maybe the $750,000 prize pool tournament. So that's the Mythic Championships update. A lot of news there, a lot of stuff for people to strive for, and I might try. We'll have to see. Another update for paper events is video coverage. We finally got a little bit of news. Wizards briefly mentioned that, yep, they're not going to do it anymore, and they actually called out that viewership of Grand Prix was modest, which is true and a very generous way of putting it. Something that people sometimes forget. And I've got to caveat this with, I liked watching coverage now and then, and if you loved watching coverage, it really sucks that it's gone away for a little bit and is now going to come back in a reduced, at least to start, way. But what you've got to remember is there's 20 to 50 million Magic players. And most Grand Prix get 15,000 to maybe 30,000 viewers. That's a fraction of 1% of the Magic player base that is actually watching this. That's a really small number. That's a really small number for what is a very expensive thing to do. A lot of people think, you know, oh, you could pay Marshall $200 for the weekend. A, you can't. That's way too little. And B, you have to pay them a wage. You have to pay for their hotels, their flights, their food. You have to pay for probably at least the same number of not on-screen people, if not more, to run the boards and to run the tech and to lay the cables and all that stuff. I'd be shocked if a coverage weekend didn't cost $10,000 to $20,000. And they do this several weekends a year, and they don't make that much off of Twitch ads, let me tell you. So it's definitely something that I can understand them cutting. Now, it does suck for those who do watch it. And so luckily, Channel Fireball has decided they are going to pick up video coverage for a select number of Grand Prix in 2019. It's not a huge number, but it's more than 0, and it's a start. And it sounds like CFB maybe didn't have a lot of knowledge this was going to happen, so we're probably lucky that we are getting a select number of GPs, let alone none. So there's going to be two commentary teams, LSV and Riley Knight, as well as Marshall Sutcliffe and William Huey Jensen. As well, they're going to have Vincent Chandler, better known as Pleasant Kenobi, on the floor, kind of doing the BDM role, and we'll talk about BDM in a second. So I'm excited to see how CFB does coverage, what they keep, what they don't keep from the WotC coverage, and yeah, we'll see how they do. And I'm happy to hear that they're doing this. I don't imagine that coverage makes money, so it's good to see them picking it up. We'll see what happens next year. So speaking of BDM, Brian David Marshall, he's the Pro Tour historian. He is the guy who has been at every Pro Tour. He's been on the commentary team for forever. If you ask him who won this random Grand Prix, he will tell you. He will know off the top of his head. He is a great resource to the Magic community and has just done fantastic coverage and kind of on-the-floor reporting and interviewing for years and years and years and years and years and years. He's now retiring from the Magic commentary coverage scene, unfortunately. He released a press release just before Mythic Championship Cleveland happened, saying that this would be his last one. He has a very exciting job opportunity that he wants to put his full focus on, and so unfortunately we'll have to step away from Magic. So no information on what that job is. We don't really need to know. We don't have to. Don't bug him to try to figure it out. Super excited for him to have his new opportunity, and glad we had him for as long as we did. He did amazing work. Check out his interviews this weekend from Mythic Championship Cleveland. Super great guy. We were lucky to have him. Go watch some of his best stuff. He's great, and I definitely hope he does well in whatever he goes on to. So finally, Mythic Championship Cleveland happened this week alongside Magic Fest Cleveland and the Grand Prix at Magic Fest Cleveland. So Mythic Championship Cleveland had a lot of stuff happen in it. First off, they hit 60,000 viewers on Twitch. That is a huge record for Magic. I still don't think that's enough to instantly justify coverage as being a profit maker. That's still not there. But that's an amazing, amazing boost. And it really goes to show you that Arena has really sucked in a lot of players. There are a lot of new Magic players because of Arena. So the next thing that happened is we had an amazing top 8. We had Reed Duke, who is an amazing all-around guy. This, I think, was his 4th Pro Tour top 8, which is probably enough to make sure that he is definitely in the running for Hall of Fame in the future, depending on what happens in the Hall of Fame. We'll have to see what changes happen there. LSV made his 10th Pro Tour, his second, he was back-to-back Pro Tour. I don't know if he's done that before. Top 8. Easily solidifying that LSV is definitely one of, if not the best, player of all time. Absolutely amazing player and just amazing guy. And we also had some amazing sportsmanship in the top 8. Just great people all around. And specifically, we had Autumn Burchett, who absolutely crushed this weekend. They were in the spotlight the entire weekend playing Mono Blue, arguably one of the best decks going right now. It's what I played on Magic Arena to get up to Platinum. And they were just crushing people left and right on day 1. Day 2, they continued crushing. They got to the top 8, crushed Reed Duke, just did absolutely incredible. As well, they made history. They are the first non-male to win a Pro Tour, and the first person to win a Mythic Championship. And they're also the first non-binary person to win a Mythic Championship. So huge, huge congratulations to Autumn. They were in the spotlight all weekend, and I saw, thankfully, almost nothing but universal praise. Great coming together of the community. Just really nailed home how good this Mythic Championship was with them winning. Super proud of them. Super proud of everybody in that top 8. This Mythic Championship was exactly what Magic is and what the Magic community is. And I was super, super happy to see that. So the last thing to talk about today. This is a long news video. There's been a lot of news coming out recently, a lot of stuff happening. Is going to also be about the Mythic Championship. And it's a little bit more negative, but attempting to correct people, we'll say. Cheating. Cheating. Nobody likes cheating. However, Reddit, Twitch chat, etc. has a little bit of a habit of going a bit too ham on trying to get them their dirty cheaters when they don't really understand how cheating works. So there were 3 scenarios that I know of from last weekend. Up first, we had a player who was actually playing against someone who used to play at my store in London. Sean Dollywall, great player, made day 2 of the Mythic Championship in Cleveland. And in round, I believe it was 15, he noticed his opponent draw an extra card off of Hydroid Krasis. Called a judge, the player was disqualified for cheating. We'll come back to this. The second situation, there was a player, I don't remember his name offhand, he was playing against Patrick Chapin, and he played a land, and then activated Teferi, and activated, I think he had Kaya on the board, I think he was on Esper control, and then did some other stuff, and then played a land, second land, passed the turn. Nobody caught it. No penalty. We'll come back to that. Scenario 3, Marcio Carvalho, I think is his name, a person who has been disqualified for cheating before, was playing against an opponent who had sided in Cry of the Carnarium. Marcio was playing mono white. Cry of the Carnarium was played, which does -2/-2, and all creatures who died this turn are exiled. Marcio, in response, sacrificed Dauntless Bodyguard before Cry resolved, put it into the graveyard. Cry resolved, he took the creatures that were going to die, exiled them, play continued on. The Dauntless Bodyguard should have been exiled because Cry of the Carnarium looks backwards in time as well. Any creatures that died this turn, before or after it was played, however they died, should be exiled. He didn't do it. We'll come back to that. The first player was disqualified. The other two players didn't even get a penalty. What happened there? Reddit is angry. Reddit wants suspensions for everybody, and that's not how it works. Something that is required for cheating in a Magic the Gathering tournament is intent. Breaking the rules without intent is a mistake. That gets some sort of penalty if it is caught. Usually a warning, depending on what the mistake is. Sometimes game loss, sometimes match loss, never disqualification. If you intended to do what you did, then you get disqualified. So the first person we talked about, the person who drew an extra card off of Hydroid Krasis, they were investigated. And the judges said, oh, we already talked to you about this. This is the second time today that you have drawn extra cards off of Hydroid Krasis. So now it is no longer a mistake, it is a pattern. And so there's kind of two things that could have happened with this player. Firstly, they were cheating. They were drawing extra cards because they thought they could get away with it. That's a disqualification. Optimistically, giving them the benefit of the doubt, they were playing so sloppily and poorly that they weren't counting the number of cards they should be drawing, that they were actually impacting the integrity of the tournament. That's the best case scenario. They were so bad at what they were doing that they were screwing up the tournament and got disqualified, as is appropriate. Now, I know Sean, who caught this, is advocating for a suspension, as are other people. I'm not quite advocating for a suspension there because this is the Pro Tour. I don't know this player's background. This might have been their first Pro Tour. If this hopefully was their first disqualification, operating under those assumptions, I'm not willing to give a suspension for what could have been a pair of mistakes. But should this player continue to do this, after being disqualified from probably the biggest tournament they're ever going to be at in their life, if they continue to make those mistakes, they're either so bad at this game that they're going to screw up many tournaments and need to be suspended, or they are in fact flat out cheating. So I'm not a fan of a suspension for this player for the first case, if this is the first case, but if it continues, then a suspension is called for. Now, moving back to the other two players who didn't even receive warnings because it wasn't caught. And they can't receive a penalty if it's not caught by a judge in time. The first player who played an extra land, they were massively far ahead. They already had a bunch of lands. They had two planeswalkers that had been relatively highly ticked up, and their opponent had nothing. Their opponent had to draw a series of specific cards to even stay alive. Playing that second land, there was no advantage gained. A lot of stuff had happened between the first land play and the second land play. The player, after being investigated, hadn't done this before. There's no reason to believe that this was intentional. Again, if this was the second time that they had done that day after being talked to, then certainly a disqualification is called for. But in this case, there's no intent. There's no reasonable belief that there was an intent there. If the player was desperately behind and they desperately needed that extra land and that's how they were going to change the game, well, the likelihood of intent goes up. But with no intent, we have no disqualification. And that brings us to the final one where people are most rabid because it is somebody who has been disqualified for cheating before. But Cry of the Carnarium has been causing people to make mistakes since it came out, because most cards don't look backwards like that. Most cards just care about what has happened after that card resolves, which is why he sacrificed the Dauntless Bodyguard in response. And keep in mind, the player who chose to put Cry of Carnarium in their deck, the player who is playing this card, didn't catch that bodyguard should have been exiled. There was no sleight of hand going on here. He didn't pile up his creatures, slip one out, and put the rest into the exile zone. He did this. He said, I'm going to sack this in response to this and put it in my graveyard. Nobody caught it because this card is very weirdly worded. This has not happened with that player before this day. He hadn't been talked to it before. It's very unreasonable to assume that there was any intent here. So remember, before you get on your forums and Twitch chat and etc. demanding that people be suspended, there has to be intent. Now, I don't want to hear any comments about, oh, so a player could just draw 17 cards and say, I didn't know I couldn't do that. No. Judges are not stupid. Keep that in mind. Judges aren't stupid. We can reasonably tell if there was intent or not, and we know if there's a background to this player in that tournament. We know if they've been talked to about certain things. So I am totally on board with all of the decisions that were made. The disqualification that did happen, awesome. The 2 disqualifications that didn't happen, awesome. I'm on board with it all. Make sure that you know what you're talking about before you start getting angry about this stuff. Anyways, that was a long news update. There was a lot of news this week. This week, I'm hoping maybe not as much news. It's Monday and no real news happened, which is great. I do know that there's an announcement coming on Thursday about that upcoming Modern product, so that's going to have to hold off till Monday. But let me know what you thought about all this news. If you watched Mythic Championship, what you thought of it. Let me know about everything in the comments down below. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, twitch.tv/themanandleek, where I will be streaming Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and Saturday this week. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. They've given me a bunch of packs and gems, and they've given me 100 packs to give away to you guys. So make sure you go and watch on Twitch and get those hashtag sponsored packs. On Saturday, I will be doing a large community stream over on twitch.tv/themanandleek. It's my 1-year anniversary of becoming a Twitch affiliate. So we're going to do all kinds of community stuff. We're going to do direct challenges on Arena, play Jackbox games, Choice Chamber, all kinds of participation stuff like that. Probably do some giveaways, and we're going to reset that marble leaderboard and start the marble race season number 1. For those of you who don't know, we do marbles in between rounds of Magic and stuff like that. They're races, they're fun, and you earn points. At the end of every 3 months, starting this Saturday, the points leader, which is probably one of the people who have been there the most, will get themselves a free playmat from Inked Gaming. So check that out. You can also go to patreon.com/themanandleek to help the channel out directly there. If you like the content, click that thumbs up button, click subscribe if you want to see more, and if you do have questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, see y'all next time.